Today's Fireside Chat is episode number 69, which is going to be held by Mona, our junior project manager, Cecilia, who is one of our directors, and Remco, our founder and CEO. The topic of the day is the unexpected issues with website relaunch.
As Anna already mentioned, we speak about website relaunch today. Most of the time we relaunch a website because of technical infrastructure is poor, so also means that the customer experience is poor as well. The recent issue I encountered was the subscription, like when a customer subscribes to a product, which he gets she gets every month. When you move to a new website, they have to renew their payment methods. And I think that's quite difficult because you lose quite a lot of subscribers, but yeah, there's also no other way. Now I want to ask, what is your last issue you encounter when it comes to website relaunches?
Just one? Well, I think there are a few obvious ones that might not quite be as interesting. So I'm more interested in the less obvious ones, but very obvious ones are certainly your organic rankings, of course. So I think oftentimes companies relaunch websites and underestimate, first of all, the time and effort it takes, but also usually a website relaunch is not perfect, right? So you usually put something live that isn't quite as good as it should be. You need to correct stuff, you need to fix issues, and you need a few weeks for that. And during that time, if you haven't planned this well, you might lose a lot of your organic traffic because Google crawlers just encounter lots of technical or redirect or other issues. So I think that's one of the things that companies oftentimes underestimate. And then I think one of the most discussed issues that I don't actually really have an opinion on, maybe you guys do, is the impact on customers that know the website already. It might be better from a usability standpoint, or it might, look and feel more modern. But what will happen to the users that have just grown used and accustomed to the old version of the website, right? I think that's one of the biggest fears that companies have, but I don't actually know how relevant or not that is. So maybe you have more insights into that. But I think that's an issue you need to consider. Are you trying to get the best possible website out there, or are you trying to get the website that works for your customers, your existing customers as well, and is just a bit better, right? So is it incremental or is it something completely new? I think the transitioning of data, basically what you just mentioned, is where's stuff saved? Do you, for some technical reason, need to have people reset their payment methods, their accounts, their data, whatever? I think that's one very pertinent point that I personally have never thought about, actually. So I think that's super relevant because we all know if we have to renew a subscription, chances are we just won't do it, right? So that's actually pretty dangerous, I guess. Anything else?
But that's a question of infrastructure versus website, right? So what constitutes a relaunch? Because if you're talking about what makes migrating data or changing a subscription model from an old one to a new one, that might have nothing to do with the website itself, or at least in my personal opinion and experience. And most of it, the most important thing that a lot of companies, especially the smaller ones that turn into really big ones, don't do it at the right time, is separating the back end from the front end so that they can play around with the layout, with imagery, with everything that happens on the website, basically the structure of what the customer sees. And have that be independent of how actually the technical flow of everything that goes on in, logistics and customer care and all of those other things, or how user data is used, is taken care of. Because at the time when that is separated, then you can, I guess, just evolve the way you communicate with your customers and everyone who you would like to reach far more flexibly. And you don't want to run into those problems, right? I don't know. Do you see that with? I see that with smaller and larger clients, but there's sort of like at some point, it just starts to make sense to try and separate it.
I mean, I guess there's like a lifetime for, I mean, a website is just one of the products that you can have where people can do stuff. But let's stick with the website. There is like a lifetime, or there are phases in the life of a website, right? Usually if you start small, maybe you have one developer or two developers and everything is a bit of spaghetti code and it's been built up over a few years and just stuff added here and there. And then probably at a certain point in time, you need to professionalize this. You need to maybe split up stuff. You need to build APIs so that parts of this can communicate without, being totally codependent. And I guess it's just really important to kind of go through these phases at the right time, right? Because what I've seen a few times happen is that basically you stick with what you have and you just try to improve it and make it work somehow. And after a few years, you realize it's such a mess. You need to redo the whole thing because you haven't actually taken the steps to clean it up early enough, right? And to maybe separate parts or, make sure that it works well and can actually grow, right? And I guess the challenges that you have when you do a relaunch are basically you can you can kind of estimate how big they're going to be by how much time before that you've spent on not working cleanly. I don't know how to phrase this properly, but I think the more spaghetti code you've produced over the years before, obviously the harder your relaunch is going to be, right? So that's a very obvious rule, kind of. And if the payment system in your example, I don't know how it works, right? But if it had been separated out, or if it had been built as an API that just works independently from all the other parts, probably they wouldn't have had that issue, right?
Like kind of an external.
Exactly, just like independent services, for example, right?
Yeah, it's also then not so heavy in the back end when it's like not
exactly
like integrated there. Also the data which is collected. But I think also the growth is a very important topic, because when you relaunch a website and when you're in that stage, then it's maybe good. But when you think in 2 years, maybe
exactly.
you have 20 more products.
Maybe you have 10 more languages that you need to serve.
Or internationalization. I think that's a few points I quite like to forget because it's also expensive to have like a bigger tool and a bigger subscription and everything. But when you have to do it more new in 2 years and you have a spaghetti in 2 years again, I think it's even more expensive to just like do it once properly. But yeah, I think also a website you have to relaunch sometimes because like everything is changing and quite fast, and you have to be like all the time in the front too.
And what are the main reasons that like partners or clients ask you guys for, and why they want to change their website?
It's actually interesting. I think there's a conflation. Is that the right word? Conflation? A mix of things that don't necessarily need to be mixed, right? I think oftentimes people ask for a website relaunch because they feel that the optics of the website are not up to speed anymore, or the speed maybe even. But that, I feel like sometimes relaunches are done when it wouldn't really need to have to be a relaunch. It could just be an optical like redesign maybe, or a refresher. It wouldn't necessarily need to be an actual relaunch. Most of the time, I don't know if you feel differently, but most of the time I feel that the demand for redoing or relaunching a website actually comes from a place of we're not happy with what we have, so we want something better. And I'm not sure that if you don't have a good idea of how it could be better, you should actually do a relaunch, you know what I mean? So if you don't know what would actually help your customers, why would you think that just relaunching a website would make anything better, right?
Yeah.
I think there's often a confusion around why certain things are being done, and something like a website relaunch always sounds like it's not easy, but it kind of sounds like an easy fix to make everything better, which it doesn't. Just by relaunching, nothing gets better, and worst case, things get more complicated and take you lots of time and money, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good question that everybody should ask themselves when they want to do or think about a relaunch. Why really do you want it, and how can you ensure that what you expect from that relaunch actually happens, right? What's the parts of the relaunch? What are the details that will ensure that this is actually better than what you had before and not just looks better, right?
Yeah, my experience is that the customers say, for example, okay, we want this. We saw it on that website. That's pretty cool. We want it as well. And then we say, with this infrastructure, is it just not possible? Because like that's a card house, and when we add something new, it breaks like everything. And then they recognize, yeah, maybe we should do a relaunch. We already talked about most of the time, but it's also expensive. But I think that's like very small things, but you just can't do it. For example, like the product library, like to change the sort or something. Sometimes it's just not possible. And to add another plugin, that's another solution for these little things they want to do, because a plugin is quite huge. Just to change the sort, that's not going to happen on a few websites. I think I have more of these experience, but there are also smaller companies I work on. So yeah, it depends.
But doesn't that go back to, if you are, no matter what size company you are, you need to kind of weigh short-term versus long-term impact versus, benefits and effort and these kinds of things. So if you're a small company, you start maybe with a 5-page WordPress site. That's fine. You grow after a few years, you add plugin after plugin, the site goes, gets slower and slower, and eventually you think, okay, this is just not going to work. I need something else. But maybe you make the same mistake you made before. You just go to something else that you think suits your needs at the moment better, without thinking about, okay, if I have the same situation in 3 years, what am I going to do then, right? So that's what I meant by phases. Depending on how fast you're growing, what size you are, and what your plans are for the next years, maybe it will be a bit smarter, instead of going from, oh my God, I have a need and a pain and we need to change this now and we build something now. Think about, okay, where am I coming from? What do I need now? And what will I need in 2 to 3 years? And can I somehow kind of go through that in a more planned way, without just kind of always being, oh my God, it's going to break now, I need to fix it now. Kind of these last minute, high effort activities, right? Yeah.
So what's a good time to start working on these types of like projects, or to question what's there? Does it depend on like seasonality, or potentially a topic in some businesses? I mean, they need time. These are not things that should be done.
That's the point, exactly. They need time, but of course, if you don't have a strong need, you don't usually make it a priority, because you have other issues, right? So, I mean, it's always, are you a startup? Are you 3 people? Are you 50 people? Are you 200 people? If you're anything above 50, I would say your CTO or your whatever head of development should probably always have kind of an idea of the next few years, technically, right? But if you are a startup, probably you should think more about, seasonality, your expected growth. What's going to happen if you grow from 300 customers to 20,000 a month? And when do you expect that to happen realistically? Not in your investor presentation slides, but realistically. And what would you need for that, right? And can you somehow make room and money to prepare for that? Personally, if I was to put my money into something, I would be very happy if people showed me that they had at least an idea of how to tackle future challenges, right?
Yeah.
And also, we started to have a list, like I think 1.5 years before we relaunched, just to collect things, like also when it's just a little thing, like which is a pain point or like a wish on for a new website, and then it's also you have a better overview, because then you have these little things, you want this and this and this and this during the years, or you think about in the beginning, okay, we want for the shop all these points, how we can fix it, or what is the best solution for it. When you think about, you can use it with, you can use 10 plugins, okay, solved, but that's not the thing. Maybe there is a plugin which is expensive, but you solve 20 issues or wishes or whatever. It makes more sense to have more like really like also research behind it and find better solutions, also work with different ITs, also like with coded parts. And I think it's kind of a collect as like, and it needs a research from every side. It's from the logistic, from the UX, from IT, also from just employees from the brand, because they also have maybe a love for the brand.
Yeah.
Or the community as well.
If I may ask, that sounds a lot like the whole relaunch was more driven from internal needs versus recognized customer needs. Do you think that's true?
I think it started with technical issues.
Okay.
Also, page, like super class one, page speed up to really back-end things, what sometimes the customer, I think, not even recognize. But when you go on a website and you wait for 10 seconds till you see the first product, I don't know.
It's very zen. Could advertise.
Train your patient. No. Till to what I said before, like, we want this, yeah, but it's just not possible with this website. I think it's like, and then when an owner sometimes just like, there's not, like also the mobile version, you look all the time on your laptop when you're in the office, but then you say to the client, so okay, now watch it look at your phone, and it's just like not good. And they never thought about, because they're all the time working on their laptops.
But do you feel like that sounds like there's a lot of internal needs and a few biases involved here, right? Like this. We are all digital workers. We all tend to work on computers. We all look at stuff on computers. 70% of the people use their mobiles, right? So that sounds like there were a lot of challenges. And I wonder, do you feel that this relaunch actually also helped the people or the company recognize a few of these biases and lenses? And do you feel like they actually learn something as well? Because I think that's also something really interesting about when you do a relaunch, either of a product or a website or an app or whatever. Best case scenario, you also learn a lot about how you as a company work, things you should have done better. Maybe you do retros, So ideally, it's not just the website that improves. Ideally, a lot of other things improve as well, because people learn, right?
It's also an educational thing with the client, because you can say you need this, for example, but they don't understand why you need it, or what is the also like it solves more than one problem. Except, for example, the page speed. It's just like not for Google. It's also for the user very important.
Also for the user.
Also for the user, quite nice to have a product in 1 second. But it's like sometimes the connection between the technical part and to the user, and also for them in the back end, when you have to add a product and you need like 2 hours to add a product because the website is so slow, so also the back end is super slow. It's just also not efficient in the company. It's like, and in the big, I think it's very difficult for a client to see all these points together. It's for them easier, it's for the client, for the user easier, and I think that's an educational thing. And every topic you have to talk about and say, look, now it looks like that, and now that's the issue. When we solve it with that, when that's the solution and we implement it, then you get this, this, and this, and this. I think it's very important, because also then they see 60K or whatever for a new website, and but they just see the 60K and the list, but nothing else. And it's very important to educate them, especially also the founder team and so, because they invest, and also that they can speak with the investors, because they can't say, yeah, we need a new website, but when they ask why, so yeah, because it's not good. I think education is very important.
You know what I love most about website relaunches?
I'm curious about that now.
No, seriously, you know what I love? It's as you said, it's just it's an opportunity to just talk to all of the stakeholders that are involved in the company, right? As you said, maybe it's investors, maybe there's a part on a website that is not investor relations, for example, that people should be using, or if there is a product team works. We have direct sales, but they also have a retail network that they work with. Maybe this is an opportunity to talk to the retail network and ask them what they would like to see in terms of additional product information, or how to deal with services and warranties and all of those things. And if they can do that through the website through simple forms, or if they have to send a fax out or an email to that one person who might be on holiday next week. I mean, there's so many. It's so nice to use this platform, which we call a website, basically, to get everyone on board again, to see what do you want to communicate, how do you want to be out there, what are the things that you would need, and that can be in logistics, it can be in sales, it can be in business development, it can be in investor relations. Like, all of these things just can come together. I personally like that, but that's also why it should be more of a process and not just a sales tool for online performance marketers potentially that would like to sell one product and they own the website. If you can get the whole company involved, or just make sure that multiple stakeholders are at the table to talk about the vision of the company and how they would like to be perceived and where they would like to go, and a website relaunch can be a perfect just door opener to like a conversation starter to make sure that you get everyone on board and looking in the right direction again.
Yeah, I think also very nice ideas come up when you have different views and different areas come together for a website relaunch.
Well, let's not forget the customers, right?
I
think that's also really, really important, and something that gets forgotten quite often, depending on the type of company, I suppose, depending on the type of product that they have. If you are, I don't know, like a SaaS company or a subscription service, really, I think you tend to focus much more on what drives your customers versus when you're just selling a one-off product, right? Maybe then you're more focused on your own internal issues. But if it's about really motivating customers, or if the process is a bit more complicated, I think you can't do this without doing proper research on what, on your customer needs, what they would actually experience as an improvement on the website, right?
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes something is just really good, but it's just not visible, right?
Yeah.
It's the same. It's like nobody knows here on the call. There are croissants here, right? Like we can't have the croissants, but they're right outside of frame for some reason. The product is just so good, it's a shame to hide it. And sometimes we have to just think about that as well. It's about creating visual results, and if it's just about retouching, doing touch-ups of the website, making it look better, making things available to the customers, or showing your results.
It smells nice as well.
Yeah, it smells nice. Yeah. Then it's already worth it.
4D website. That would be nice. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's going to be our next product launch, right? GANDT.ch with smell-enhanced
croissants in like morning breakfast meeting.
Yeah, wait for it.